And thank you again for being here and coming and hearing about the indirect measures that have been going on at the university when it comes to assessing core competencies. Mark Troy is from Mars, and we're grateful for him to be here.
Sandy,
oh yeah, and Sandy's from Venus.
That may be true too.
Measurement and Research Services.
That's right.
And Mark
qualitative.
administers the NESE every other year. The Texas A&M system asks us to do that and helps to pay for it, and he's kind of the boss of all things NESE here. And then Sandy Osters is from Student Life Studies, and she's going to be talking about the campus climate study that they've done and the 08 data, which is really exciting. So I just wanted to, and you'll see that both of those, as well as the University Writing Center, are all cooperative sponsors for the seminar series. This is the 4th seminar in the series of 5 seminars about assessing core competencies at A&M. Just as an overview, I want to remind you that one of the things we're putting, one of the reasons why we put this information all together in the way that we put it together is because we know in terms of what we're asked to do, that we're going to have to be able to show that as an institution we identify general education competencies or core competencies, and that we try and gather as much evidence as we can to show the extent to which graduates have attained them. That's what we're trying to do. And that's why we're gathering up as much of this evidence as we can so that we can show a lot of different measures that we're using in order to gather up and prove the extent to which graduates have attained these competencies at Texas A&M. Now, what are the competencies? I know there's an academic master plan and a roadmap for academics, and all those folks are working really hard. I've communicated a little bit with the academic roadmap folks, and they tell me that the core competencies is pretty tough to disagree with, you know, mastering a discipline and writing well and critical thinking and being a good leader in a global and diverse society that we've been valuing for a long time now. So what they're looking at are other competencies that make Texas A&M graduates particularly unique. So I think we're still on a good track in our trying to gather up evidence for these 4. And these are the 4 that were approved in Faculty Senate. So when this went to Faculty Senate from the Core Curriculum Council, what we did was we asked ourselves a couple questions. What are we already doing where we can show that we're gathering up evidence for showing that graduates have attained these things? And obviously the climate study was something that came to mind as an indirect measure. And the National Survey of Student Engagement was the other that came to mind as something we've been doing already to gather up information. The NESE is a wealth of information, as you'll learn from Mark, in terms of these core competencies. So those are the 2 we're going to hear from today. We're going to hear from Sandy first.
I don't have any of the qualitative data entered into this report. It's massive, and it is enriching to all the quantitative data you're about to be exposed to, so understand that's why this is preliminary campus data. Also keep in mind when you're looking at this that there's a real difference between statistical significance and practical significance, and although I'm going to give you those statistical differences, we have to, the discussion part, which would really be the part you would want, would be, you know, what difference does this make? I'm hopefully, not only will you know this data exists, but really I need to come, I need to do a road show. You need to invite me to the diversity committees in your colleges, places like that in the Faculty Senate group, when this data is all completed in March, to have the kinds of discussions we need to have. But at least you're going to be the first people that I have given an advanced glance at this. And I'm not going to be going through all of them either. All of the slides I have, so I'm going to give you some that we're not going to even talk about. I did want to tell you, I gave you the survey instrument because that will be more important to you than anything. You'll know the questions that students had and all the qualitative data there is to support it, because we many times would say, please explain your answers. This is what we wanted to do. We wanted to know if there were differences among undergraduates by race, gender, and classification in regards to their participation in academic opportunities, co-curricular, with professors and staff, their satisfactions and their perceptions of the importance of diversity and the benefits of it, and their perceptions of benefits of completing their degree from A&M. So we had a fairly healthy agenda of things we wanted to learn about. Also, I should tell you, this is the first time we've ever done this survey where it wasn't just about race and ethnicity. We finally got frustrated that that was the constant call people had. We just want to know about this. And Dave McIntosh is sitting back here, and he was part of the design of the survey and part of the person that sat through sludging hours of qualitative content analysis. So there's somebody else in the room besides myself who's knowledgeable about this. The item pool, this is another important thing for you to know. This was done before the core competencies were blessed, so it wasn't directly to try to do that fourth core competency about ethical leadership in a global and diverse society. It will do better at doing that the next time around. But we took all these things, the campus climate survey that we did in 2002, bias-related incidents survey at Aggie Spirit, a faculty climate survey, the staff climate survey. We took everything that you see there, including Vision 2020, and did a content analysis on all the statements that they had on diversity to come up with thematically what were the things that we're saying as an institution or students have already said to us to try to design this survey. And so we have 8 themes that came out as a result of that. Their demographics, their friendships, academic success, involvement. You can read that. I don't need to read it for you. I will tell you that all of these areas have scholarship support for the retention, attrition, transition from high school, underrepresented students at predominantly white institutions. All that's there. So this wasn't just, this sounds good, let's answer these questions. They all have a scholarship or research support for why we answered them or asked them. We had a stratified random sample. When we want to know about diversity, we always have to stratify because we don't, especially in Asian Pacific Islanders and African American Black students, we just don't have enough to take our chances. So we always do a random stratification. The total sample was 5,000, as you can see. We sent initial invitation to participate and 3 pestering emails to follow up asking that they do that. So this was a web-based survey. Of the 5,000, we have a 20% response rate, 1,025 responding. You can see from this slide that the sample and the respondents are very, very similar. I'm going to pop through the next one, which you can look at your leisure, and also show you that the spring 2008 SIMS data would also indicate that for the most part, our respondents were very much like the student population that was here ethnically that's in the spring. Okay? All right, moving right along. This one is sort of interesting. You know, how would you describe the racial composition of your high school? If you notice here, I don't know if it's interesting or surprising to you. We've got this broken out by ethnicity, but you do notice the p-value on this thing. These differences are very significant. We have students coming to us from far more racially diverse high schools than A&M is racially diverse. That's one thing that would stand out to you. And then you can notice the differences by ethnicity of where these kids are coming from and the environments they're coming before they come here. Next, we asked them by classification, or we sorted this by classification because I was curious if there were changes over time, if our seniors, perhaps their high school situations were a little different. I think it's too early to tell for any of the changes that were there. We also asked them, which is really the fascinating one, how is the racial composition of the neighborhood where you grew up? And if you take this back and look at it with their high schools, you will notice that they live in our white students live in far whiter environments than they go to high school in. Very startling differences here. So for the Asian Pacific Islanders, they said 50% of them said that their neighborhoods were primarily, were mostly white, but 47% of the high school. The one that really stands out is Black non-Hispanic students. 25%, both where they live and where they go to school, are mostly white. And then you've got the Hispanic students, 42% of them telling you that they're in mostly white neighborhoods, but their schools, their high schools, are only 28% mostly white. So this is one of these kinds of things about, okay, that needs discussion. What does that mean? I'm not exactly sure. I wish we had time to discuss it. I'm just popping it out there for you to look at. And we also looked at racial classification, by classification, the racial compositions of their high schools. That, that question mark to me is this changing? Of course, somebody who lived through the 60s would say that not much has changed, even if we thought it was going to change then. Upon graduating from college, would you consider working or living outside of Texas? You know, one of the reasons we answered this is there's a standard perception here that students don't want to leave the state of Texas. Okay, well, you can see that that's just not particularly true. It dispels some of that notion. Those might not be as high statistics as we wish that they would be, but they're certainly more than the majority in most cases. And I find this interesting, and you're going to see this in a lot of these slides, how our black students respond here. 66% of them would consider living or working outside. They're the highest percentage of blacks said that they would work versus those other categories. This was followed by a please explain. So there's a lot of great qualitative data coming in to give more information about this. Would you consider living or working outside of the United States? Not as much. All right? So you can see how that works. I'm going to pass over the next one. I'm sorry to do this to you, but I want Mark to have more time because the NESE has more direct impact on these core competencies. This is only talking about one. Study abroad, if that's important to your colleges or your departments in terms of students and their capacity to live and work in a global or diverse world, then you would want to know, have they participated? You can see the numbers are pretty low. You can see also that gender is playing a role here. Far more women are participating or interested in participating than men, which may say something to us about how we market this. I mean, why would that difference be there? And classification certainly is different. It's all over the place. I can't figure that one out in terms of the different years they've been here. But then when we ask if they plan to participate, there's a little bit more, well, of course, maybe I will in the future, and you can see all of those are statistically significant responses. The question is that good enough? If study abroad is part of what we think is important for students or that kind of experience, regardless how it is, then we're not, how are we promoting it, how are we talking about it. We ask them here, give you another question, why not? Or if you said no, or it depends, or I've not thought about it, you can see the one that's most relevant is the one about insufficient funds, but does not fit into my degree program. Well, there again, there's a question to me, is if it's important, or a college or a department thinks it's important, then there must be some sort of consideration for how it would fit into the degree program. I plan to complete my degree at A&M, not much that you need to, not much question there, and we asked them to explain their responses there. I have at least one Texas A&M faculty member, TA, staff member or academic advisor who's a role model and or mentor to me. Now, obviously, let's look at the faculty one. You find that interesting that African American black students would speak more positively about that, say yes, more so than other ethnicities would? I don't know. I also think when I look at staff member, that doesn't surprise me so much because of all the organizational support in the co-curricular experience for students of color and underrepresented students, so that didn't surprise me that that would step off like that. We also asked them, and this looks very much the same, do you know a faculty member, teaching assistant, staff member, academic advisor well enough that they would write a letter of recommendation? And there again, interesting how the African American students are more certain of that than students of other ethnicities. Okay. I plan to go to graduate school and a professional school. Again, look at how ethnicity breaks out there. I don't know if these are surprising you or not, but it may be consistent with having the role modeling mentoring that we just saw before. All of these things are just, I'm just laying this out for you. We need discussions are needed to understand the implications of this. If I am interested, I feel the following opportunities are available to me. You need to look through each one of these slides separately. I don't have enough time to go through them. There's 3 of them here, but you can see we talked about work study, arts, honors courses. If there's any puzzlement for individual people working in those areas, student organizations or clubs, volunteer service, leadership positions, all those there for you to look at and look over and see what you think. I'm recommend attending A&M because of the academic opportunities. These are the slides where our Asian Pacific Islanders, now look at the N on that, there's only 166 of them, constantly are not as positive as other ethnic groups. By the way, first generation is as explained in SIMS, so you'll know that where we got our definitions. All of these have please explains that go along with them, so when you see this data in the future, you're going to see you'll hear the student voice, you'll have quotes on there from students. From your perspective, what characteristics define diversity? Very interesting here. I can remember, I've heard many informed speakers say, if we don't ask students what they think diversity is, how do we define what they're telling us about it? Notice that from the standpoint of what is federally protected, they don't think age and disability and veteran status are. So, you know, for a large measure, those didn't come in very strongly. But we're asking their own personal definition anyway. We aren't asking them to tell us what the legal definition is. But still, then predominantly people are thinking race and ethnicity, or students are. Okay, based on your personal definition of diversity, do you think that A&M is committed to it? Okay. And here you have, I don't even know how to, we need to have a lot of discussion on this slide because it hasn't changed in 4 years. All right, that you're getting much the same thing, and look at all the different initiatives that have gone on. All right, very, very interesting to me on this one. Then we ask them, does racial ethnic diversity in the campus population benefit you personally? And you can see those responses. You know, do they even understand? I mean, the question that's calling into mind is when we describe the benefits of diversity, are we really getting through? Okay? Does racial ethnic diversity in the campus population benefit A&M? Oh, wow. Yeah, it may not benefit me, but I know the university thinks it benefits them. Look at that jump. Jennifer told me before I came over here there's lots of comments that are sort of, well, of course it benefits the university because they're supposed to look like they're recruiting and doing these kinds of things. It's the politically correct thing to do for the university. That was the kind of qualitative data that is coming out of this one. Please indicate whether you agree that the following issues are problems at Texas A&M. Race, ethnic discrimination. You look what our black students are telling us there. Okay. Gender discrimination. Still then, in all, black students speaking more strongly about that. Sexual orientation, all of these, every single one of these has statistical significance, but this is another one to sit down and say, okay, would I expect this to be the response? Am I satisfied with this? What should we be doing differently, yay or nay? This is sort of interesting too. How often have you felt uncomfortable because of someone's reaction to your ethnicity? And the percentage are responding never. So when you read this, think in the reverse here. So you can see on race and ethnicity, only 25% of the black students who answered this survey, which were only 100, said that they had never experienced it at all. Okay. Do you feel like you're part of the Aggie family? Some interesting differences there, certainly not by gender and not by classification, but by race and ethnicity. I'm glad I attend Texas A&M. We asked this question in 2002, and when we add that longitudinal piece in here, this is going to go down And it was 96% or higher in 2002 and 3. And that may be that our, that doesn't mean that we're doing a poor job. It may be that we just bring it more to people's attention. So we have to really take a strong look at what we're doing there, but there you got that one. I recommend attending it to prospective students because of the Aggie network. What does that really mean to people? Asian students aren't terribly impressed with that, but that's how we sell this institution. Over and over again we sell that network. I recommend attending because of opportunities for out-of-class involvement, and that's looking pretty strong across the board, and I think you're going to see that in the NESI. If we triangulate that data, you probably see that supported. How satisfied are you with your overall experience at A&M? And you can see those where the differences are quite clearly, or with ethnicity. There's a lot of different ways to cut this. Take a look at what's there from looking at the survey, and then know by March 2009 we'll have all the qualitative data added into, and this will be a much stronger report. But I just wanted you to know what's out there, what's possible. Yes, yes. What we need is people to say, I would find it interesting if you would do this. And then we're glad to run anything that you need. I'm going to meet with the Liberal Arts Diversity Committee in February. They will help inform me about what additional information they think would be helpful coming from this. So it's a large enough sample size here that we can do a lot with it, yes.
Now, Mark Troy is going to talk about the National Survey of Student Engagement.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The National Survey of Student Engagement, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a survey conducted out of Indiana University, and it's a survey of students at universities all across the country. The universities volunteer to participate. Actually, they pay money to participate, but it's A&M has participated since 2001. We've participated in every odd year since then. We will be participating again this year, 2009. We'll be contacting students probably within a couple weeks to take part in it. The survey is a survey of freshmen and senior students. Indiana does the sampling. We simply send them our population of students, and they draw the random samples from there so that it's possible to compare universities. You don't have to worry about biased samples or anything like that. Universities submitting only their selected students or what have you. One of the advantages of the NESI, of course, is that we are able to make comparisons across institutions, and for A&M, we're able to make comparisons against institutions that are similar to our own. We're a part of the American Association of Universities data exchange, and so all the AAUDE schools submit their NESI results to the data exchange, so we're able to see how we do relative to the other institutions. And the analysis I'm going to report in here is based on those comparisons with AAUDE institutions. Those are all institutions, and you'll see some of the names shortly. Those are all institutions that are similar to us in mission and size and everything. The NESI really has three parts. One of them is just background information on the student. Another part are the questions dealing with engagement. Engagement being defined as the extent to which a student takes part in educationally significant activities that lead to educational success, and the extent to which the university provides opportunities for student success. So both of those fall under the area of engagement. The third area type of questions that are on the NESI are what are called gains questions. They're a sort of an outcome measure. They're not really a very good outcome measure because they are a self-reported outcome measure. What they do is they ask the question, how much has your institution contributed to your development in these particular areas. And on the, going back now to the engagement questions, what NESE has done is they have categorized those engagement questions into 5 clusters of effective educational practice, which you see here. Level of academic challenge is made up of 12 questions on the NESE. Active and collaborative learning is made up of 7 questions. Student-faculty interaction is made up of 6 questions. Enriching educational experiences is made up of 11. And supportive campus environment is made up of 6. And so they have scaled these questions so that we can get a benchmark score for each of them. And then, of course, we can break those benchmarks down into the components. These are the NESE GAIN questions. There are 15 of them. The STEM is, to what extent has your experience at this institution contributed to your knowledge, skills, and personal development in the following areas? So there are questions such as acquiring a broad general education, acquiring job or work-related knowledge and skills, writing clearly and effectively, and so on. What I've done is, in parentheses, you see the just a shorthand code for what this question is, and these will appear on the analyses later on. And the words after that were my attempt to categorize these gains in terms of the competencies so that we can map them onto the engagement questions. Mapping the gains wasn't critical to this analysis or anything. That's really just for illustrative purposes. But one of the ways that I went about trying to map the gains onto the engagement was to correlate them. I used all of the AAUDE data, which is some 525,000 cases, and so ran some nice correlation matrices. And I was able to look at the correlations between the engagement items and the gains and get a sense then as to which engagement items promote, support which competencies. So let's move on now to the first item, level of academic challenge. Level of academic challenge is sort of the really big benchmark here. It's the extent to which students are engaged in challenging, intellectual and creative work, the extent to which the university is setting high standards of performance for students, and so on. And you can see then what the questions are related to level of academic challenge. Preparing for class, number of textbooks that you read, number of written papers of various lengths, coursework emphasizing analysis of the basic elements of an idea, experience or theory, coursework emphasizing synthesis, coursework emphasizing judgment, coursework emphasizing applying theories, working harder than you thought to meet an instructor's demands, and campus environment emphasizing study time. How these correlate with the gains is this way. Across the bottom you see the engagements. Some of these engagement questions are fairly unidimensional. For example, writing mid, right? That's a written paper between 5 and 19 pages. That really correlates only with gains in writing, as you might expect. Some of them are multidimensional, like synthesis, which correlates with writing, with general education, with analytic thinking, with diversity. Not all of the engagement items correlated with a gain. What I did was I simply took as a cut point a correlation of 0.5 or higher. So these are all correlations of 0.5 or higher with these engagement items. Questions such as number of assigned readings didn't correlate at 0.5 or higher with any of the gains. It did correlate with a lot of gains, though, but it just didn't correlate load on one particular one. So from this is how I kind of determined what engagement items map with what of our core competencies. Writing is pretty clear. Synthesis looks like it probably, I'd call that an analytic type of behavior. Anyway, you can see from this just what loads with which. And now here's how we do. These are the AAUDE schools from 2007. Now, clearly when we're dealing with the numbers that we have, almost any difference is going to be significant. What I calculated were the effect sizes, which is a standardized difference. I took the difference between the AAUDE mean and each of the schools and divided it by the standard deviation of the AAUDE mean. So the 0 line is the average for the AAUDE schools. Effect sizes tend to give you an idea of not statistical significance, but educational importance. And we would say that anything that is between minus 0.2 and 0.2 is a very small effect size, probably of no educational value. We would say that those differences that fall within that center range would be virtually the same. The ones we're concerned about are the ones that fall outside. And compared to the AAUDE schools in 2007, our freshmen are at the bottom, as you can see. This is a small to moderate effect size. It's something that is large enough that I think we need to be concerned about. Seniors are not a lot better. They're second from the bottom. I don't know why the name didn't appear on there, but looks like some of the names didn't fall on there. But you can see from the list on the side is reverse of what's on the scale. Seniors were second from the bottom. Again, this is something to be concerned about. What are the specific behaviors that may be an issue here? Again, we're looking at effect sizes, and again, anything between minus 0.2 and 0.2 would be considered not an educationally significant difference. Below that or above those, outside that range, those are important. Our freshmen are not writing as much as other universities in the AAUDE. This is something that we have seen on every year that we've done the NESE. Now, you know, we've made a lot of strides in getting freshmen to write and getting our students to write. Of course, the other universities are doing the same thing. I mean, in some ways, we're going after a moving target, but nevertheless, this is the direction the United States is going. We need to get students, I think, writing more. Assigned reading is third lowest on there. As I said, that's the number of textbooks that, and reading materials that students are assigned. We're low on that. That doesn't correlate specifically with any of the competencies. You could say it correlates, I would think, with all of the competencies. Analyze. That's clearly one of our competencies, analytical thinking. Again, we're kind of low on that with our freshmen. Seniors, somewhat similar. Assigned reading, we're not giving nearly the assigned readings that other AAUDE universities are. Our students are not writing the mid-length papers that our other AAUDE universities are. These are the 5 to 19 pages. Synthesis is also one that our students are falling below the AAUDE institutions on. Some of the others write small. Well, that's right on the edge between small effect and moderate effect. The next benchmark, active and collaborative learning. This is another big benchmark. This is about involving students in discussions in class, working with other students, working in different settings, collaborating with students and faculty on problems or other materials. And so some of the questions related to active and collaborative learning deal with asking questions in class or contributing to class discussions, making a class presentation, working with other students on projects during class, worked with classmates outside of class, tutored or taught other students, participated in a community-based project, discussed ideas from readings with others outside of class. And again, not all of the gains correlated 0.5 or above with these variables, but here are the ones that did. Asking questions in class correlates with writing. Making class presentations, of course, correlates with speaking and writing. Working with classmates outside of class to prepare class assignments. That correlates with the gain in work, which is acquiring job or work-related knowledge and skills. So that would relate to mastery of materials in a discipline. Tutoring, I was happy to see that that correlates with gains in quantitative thinking, because every time I've taught statistics or worked with statistics, I mean, the best way to learn is in a group with others. So, you know, that gave me a little sense that these correlations are valid here.
Mark,
Yes?
they need to grade.
Well, I think that that's pretty clear that class size has a lot to do with how many class presentations you can assign, how many papers you can assign, and everything. I mean, I keep hearing from people when I present this information that, well, teaching writing belongs to somebody else in the university, but really the support for writing comes from a central policy as to whether or not we're going to have large classes, small classes, and so on. I mean, I'm not sure how we overcome this issue of large classes versus small classes, but that clearly is going to have an effect on this. Some of the institutions, though, in terms of active and collaborative learning, we're not as far down as we were on the level of academic challenge. And in fact, we would say that we're right in the middle here. Nevertheless, you know, I think it's fair for us to say if class size is a problem, how about these other institutions? Ohio State, how are they dealing with the issue of class size? They're certainly an institution that's larger than we are. Indiana, Maryland, Purdue, they're all large institutions. We're not the only one that has to deal with this issue of class size. For seniors, we're right in the middle with active and collaborative learning. There are a few things, though, that when we look down into the details, where we could be doing better. And again, these get down to the questions of class presentation, asking questions in class, and so on. Tutoring, this is something where we really shine, though. It's sort of like we have an academic 12th man here. And, you know, it's, when we look at this, what I'd like to suggest is that, you know, not only do we look at where the weaknesses are and try and correct those, but we also ought to strengthen the strengths. And, you know, this idea that students tutor other students is really important in in developing analytic thinking, and at least from this data, and we're doing well at it. And we need to, work some more on that.
What is the CLQUD that measure?
Asking questions in class. Asking questions in class or participating in class discussions. And so these are freshmen, and they're not asking questions in class that students at other AAUDE schools are. Again, I think that gets down to some of the class size. Class presentation is similar. Seniors, we still have the same thing occurring. They're not asking the questions in class. Class presentation is close to minus 0.2, so that's very close to a small effect. The purple one, OCCC group, is working outside of class to prepare assignments. The other one, COMMPROJ, is participated in a community-based project as part of a regular course. And we've known that that's something that our students do a lot of. Again, that's another strength that we need to keep reinforcing, because it is something that contributes a lot to their learning. So I don't want, even though we focus on some of these lower elements, we also need to be aware of where our strengths are. Student-faculty interaction. This is critically important. When Sandy was talking about her data, one of the things that I remembered from a few years back when Richard Light came to talk to us was that he said one of the things that's vitally important for every student every semester, their biggest job is to get to know at least one faculty member well enough that they know who you are, you know who they are, they can write letters of recommendation and so on. That's something that really leads to learning, as we saw from Sandy's data. Not enough students are doing that. Student-faculty interaction is very important. Here are some of the things that the variables on student-faculty orientation interaction correlate with. Gains in general education from receiving prompt feedback, discussing ideas with readings or from your classes with faculty members, helps with writing, worked with faculty members on activities other than coursework. This has an effect, an impact all the way through on gains in job-related knowledge, gains in speaking. CMPTS is computer and technological skills. Gains others is in understanding other people of diverse backgrounds. And again, we actually are pretty average with regard to the AAUDE universities with our freshmen and with our seniors. And in fact, none of those variables that go into this benchmark are significantly above or below average. So I actually didn't show any slides for that. We don't have to worry about that. We're right in the middle on student-faculty interaction with regard to our peer institutions. Enriching educational experiences is a benchmark that relates to all of the other, or a lot of the other activities that occur, many of them outside the classroom, complementary learning activities such as co-curricular activities, internships, community service, foreign language, independent study, culminating senior experiences, having conversations with students of different religious beliefs, race or ethnicity, contact with students from different economic, social, and racial backgrounds, participating in learning communities, you can see that a lot of the diversity and leadership competencies come about in enriching educational experiences, plus some of the higher order things such as analytical thinking, which shows up in studying foreign languages, shows up in study abroad. Gain in citizenship, for example, is voting in elections. Diversity shows up under diverse student, which is having serious conversations with students of a different race or ethnicity. Having conversations with students who are different in terms of religious beliefs, opinions, or personal values has an effect on diversity, analytical thinking, citizenship. So some of these variables really have impacts all around. Our freshmen are actually pretty high up on this. Seniors, though, I don't know what the issue is with seniors, but they're second from the bottom, although again, the effect size is a small to moderate effect, more closer to the small side. This is freshmen, and the things that would be a concern are foreign language here for freshmen. Some of the things that I think I need to mention here. On some of these questions, such as study abroad and senior culminating experience, the question actually asks, have you taken it? Do you plan to take it? Don't plan to take it, or haven't thought about it? Those are the choices. So here, when we see that freshmen are responding to this question of senior culminating experience, that's the second one here. That really is a combination of do you plan to take it and have you done it? And we assume that the freshmen are planning to take it in this case. Where we're strong are environment of diversity, co-curricular, learning centers, or learning communities. It's not a learning center. But the university providing an environment for diversity. We seem to be doing a lot better than the other AAUDE universities, at least according to our freshmen. Seniors, what seems to be pulling seniors down is foreign language, internships, study abroad. We need to be able to get our seniors more involved in those sorts of activities. Supportive campus environment. Students perform better and are more satisfied at colleges that are committed to their success and cultivate positive working and social relations among different groups on campus. You can see that most of these items relate to diversity, analytic thinking, and so on, and many of them are really multidimensional. Environmental support. The university provides support you need to help you succeed academically. Student quality of relations with other students. Environment of non-academic, ENV, NACAD. University helps you cope with non-academic responsibilities. It correlates highly with a lot of different variables here. Social also correlates highly with a lot of different variables. And ta-da! We do better than any other institution, both our freshmen and our seniors, on those particular scales. The summary then is that we can use these NESI benchmarks to map them against the core competency in terms of looking at those behaviors that promote these core competencies. They allow us to compare the engagement of A&M students with those of students at other similar institutions. Many of these institutions in the AAUDE are our Vision 2020 students. Some of the areas in which we need to work more are those dealing with critical analytic skills and those dealing with communication and writing and speaking, areas in which our students seem to be more engaged are those that are important to development of ethical leadership in a global and diverse society.
We've given the NESI, thanks to TAMU's system, about 3 times?
5 times.
5 times.
2001, 2003, 2005, and 2007. So 4 times, and we're doing it in this spring.
Have you noticed over the course of those years anything in particular where there's been a shift or change?
No.
I see.
There has not been much of a change. When we look at these benchmark scores, these are big rocks to move, basically, and we have not moved them much. And when we compare them to the other institutions, we have to keep in mind that the other institutions are also trying to move in the same direction that we are. So we have not really changed our standing relative to others. Okay, your hand was up first.
I really like what you had to say, and it's interesting. In looking at the writing skills, you might look at what some of our peer institutions are doing in peer review of writing in the classroom, which allows large students in a large section of 100 or more students to still be doing effective and a substantial number of writing projects, where a lot of the writing is being graded by their peers and not by the professor. I think that some of our institutions are doing a lot more of that than we are, and it's mainly a matter of helping faculty find out how to do it and do it well.
Yeah, and I think the Writing Center has made great strides. You know, I hate to keep presenting this data when Valerie's here because, you know, the Writing Center has made a lot of efforts in those directions. And, you know, I think that if we were, one of the things that we need to do is we need to measure those sorts of things directly. And these are not direct measures. These are simply telling us how the opportunities that our students are engaged in compare with other institutions, but we have not had any direct measures of how we're doing.
Well, I was wondering, when you have the ones like the show the overall summary, the sort of horizontal bars, then when you look at the ones that have the individual things broken out, are the horizontal bars just sort of an overall average of that? Or is there any weighting? I mean, is it more important to have certain things than others, or?
With the horizontal bars, where we're showing the institutions themselves, let's go back to one. Okay. This is actually the composite standardized benchmark score that NESI provides that's made up of I'm not sure exactly what their weighting system is. That I'd have to go back and look directly at the formula, but it combines all of the scores on the individual items that were shown in that benchmark. So, for example, on this one, I think it's 11 different questions that are combined and scaled so that it's actually on a 100-point scale. Basically sort of a T-scale. So yeah, this is an average. What I'm showing here is deviation from that average score. I've taken the benchmark score for each of those universities, deviated that from the average benchmark score for all of the institutions, and divided by that standard deviation. So yeah.
But then if you were looking at the breakdown items, looking at the breakdown items, could some universities say, well, this is more important than that is more important, or is that anything that?
Yeah, they could, and you know, we could look at the breakdown items and compare ourselves to each of the universities on those items. There's the universities aren't able to weight them their own. If there's any sort of importance that's attached to them, it's basically in the resources that and support that they provide for those particular activities. Really, it's about 60 questions that made up this analysis. There's about 80 questions total on the NESI.
And as you know, both UT system and TAMU system use NESI results, as do a lot of other institutions, because it's part of the voluntary system of accountability. And I wanted to let you know with regard to the conference that NESI is a sponsor of the conference this year, and that's because TAMU system and UT system are pressuring NESI and saying, okay, now we've been doing this for several years, so what? What do we do with these results? So at the conference, we have Bob Smallwood coming to do a pre-conference workshop where he shows how they take faculty data, NESI data, and classroom level data and use it to make, program improvements in certain universities that use that kind of survey device. And then the other thing is, because NESI is a sponsor, they will be here. They'll have a booth at the College Station Hilton during the conference, and they're also going to be doing sessions themselves where they've really been very purposeful about inviting TAMU system and UT system folks to come. So we do have some of those.